But thank you very much for that, Denis. And I'm going to bring in Paul now, because Paul, as a trade unionist, you may have had somewhat different dealings with business leaders in your time than some other members of the panel. Should we be skeptical about the idea that some people say, and that I mentioned in the introduction, that CEOs and others from the private sector are somehow kind of more in touch with the public, or have as much to give in these debates as politicians do?
I absolutely do think we should be skeptical. That's not to say that there isn't a role for business leaders in public life. There clearly is, or to say there isn't a role for responsible businesses thinking about their impact in terms of wider stakeholders, the impact on the environment and so on. But I've got three probably initial concerns about us almost, if you like, amplifying the role of CEOs or business leaders in terms of global leadership. I think the first one is legitimacy. I mean, one of the things that are apparent is that there is a growing gap, I think, between, if you like, the shop floor and the boardroom. The CBI, which is the UK's business organisation, published a report at the end of last year. 69% of the British public feel that company bosses are out of touch with the lives of ordinary working people. There is a growing gap in terms of income between Britain's boardrooms and workers more generally. We've had the biggest squeeze on wages in the UK since the Napoleonic Wars over the last 10 years, but CEO pay has continued to go up and up. And we've also been hit by a wave of corporate scandals, whether that's BHS or we've just recently had in the UK Carillion, the collapse of a company, potential impact on 20,000 people's direct livelihoods as well as the supply chain and so on. So I'm a little bit sceptical that the chief executive is the man, and it is normally a man, and that's the second point I'm going to make, in touch with the average man and woman on the street. I think there is another point about diversity, because I think diverse leadership teams are important in companies, in trade unions, but also globally as well. I mean, it's a simple fact of life that there are more men called Dave and Steve in the FTSE 100 chief executive cohort than there are women. There are only 5 black and ethnic minority chief executives in the FTSE 100. I think we need to be doing more to create diverse leadership teams. And I worry that if we go down this road of a central role for the CEO, that what we're doing is reaffirming the existing leadership structures, a relatively closed circle of people with similar backgrounds and similar education and so on. I think the third point that really important for me is just, I mean, the starting point, your question, Josh, almost assumes that business doesn't already have a central role in global leadership. And I'd argue actually that businesses, and we'll see it at the forum here this week, have a very central role in terms of lobbying government, influencing government, can afford, have the resources to be able to do that effectively, can afford to second people into government positions, can afford to fund political parties, all legitimate activity. But I think it's important that we amplify the voices of other stakeholders. So crucially, stakeholders who can empower citizens. Trade unions, I think, are a central role in that, but other civic society organisations as well. So yes, a role for business, yes, a role for CEOs, but let's amplify the voice of other stakeholders as well. And let's make sure that they're on an equal footing if we're serious about supporting and enhancing our democratic institutions.
Great, well, thanks, Paul. Already some